Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fat Muscle Project podcast. I'm John Gorman, your host. Once again, Miss Lisa Franz is in the house. Lisa, how are you?
I'm doing very well, John. Thank you. I'm excited for our conversation with Pete today.
Yeah, this is something we were just talking before this started. We were going to talk about all kinds of stuff, physique enhancement related, because Pete's one of the top, literally one of the top coaches in the industry at large, like worldwide. And I kind of changed it on us last second and say, hey, listen, you've been doing this for a while, Pete. Like we want to know about how you've gotten to this level and what are some of the things that you've learned from. But Pete's no stranger. Pete. How many times have you spoke at the Fat Muscle Academy and been on the podcast? I mean, it's probably had to be close to half a dozen now at this point.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I spoke at the physique summit even two or three times.
Yeah, yeah, we've done a lot of business, and just to kind of tell the backstory real quick about how Pete and I kind of got linked up is obviously we've been in the same industry for a long time. Um, Spoke at the Physique Summit, Fat Muscle Academy, like you've been a part of, like you spoke at every one for like the first, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. We've just done a lot of stuff together. But clients have been on stage. We're always bumping into each other backstage at shows. But when I launched Fat Muscle as a supplement company, Pete's one of the very first people that I reached out to because we had done business together. And with your research background, and I'm going to let you do your own introduction here in a minute, but with Pete's research background, his level of professionalism as a coach, and then just what he knows about physique enhancement in general, I knew we had to have him on board Fat Muscle as a sponsored athlete. So what I did was I got him some supplements to try, and I said, "Hey, give me some feedback on this." This was in July of 2020. I'll never forget you were in town to do a show. I said, "Hey, give me some feedback. I'd really like that." And then quickly after, he came on board, and it's been great ever since. So, Pete, if you would just let everybody know that's not familiar with you a little bit more about you and what you do.
Yeah, so I guess my background, I came into bodybuilding. I started competing fairly young. I did my first show when I was 18. I started kind of lifting 15, 16-ish. Then I went to college, got a bachelor's in biochem, minored in nutrition, got a master's in biology with a physiology concentration, and then went to University of Illinois, got a PhD in nutrition. And as I was going through grad school, I was starting to work with people, more and more people coaching and kind of as a side business. And by the time I was trying to finish grad school, it was essentially a full-time job. And so since 2015, this has been my full-time job since I graduated grad school. And so, I mean, I've done other things, like coaching is my main thing. I've done other things like Cliff and I wrote a book. I do podcasts, speaking, writing, that type of thing. But yeah, the big thing is coaching, and most of the vast majority of my clients are natural bodybuilders. They compete, want to compete, have competed, and most of the vast majority of my client base is drug free at this point.
Yeah, and that brings me to a whole but so I'm just going to be, at least I'm gonna apologize ahead of time because you're probably going to want to choke me, but it's going to make me think of all these things that I want to ask Pete. But before we get to that, I want to preface this by saying, Pete, you're a humble guy. You're not going to recognize yourself as one of the best in the industry because that's just not who you are. But damn it, I will, because you really are like up there at the very, very top. And results will always speak louder than words. I mean, if you watch Pete's social, he just posts results of his clients, and they're always, whether they win or not is kind of irrelevant, even though most of them are usually in the winner circle or placing very high. But to know someone's very good at what they do as a coach, you look at the results and how their clients look. That's the main thing. When everybody is always constantly shredded, or, and you've pointed this out, they're at their best. I'm constantly seeing you post pictures of people at their best, which shows a progression over time. And in our industry, you have, I'm going to say five or six, I would say at the very, very top that can really just consistently get people peeled. I don't want to start naming them because I'm going to leave somebody out. But you're right up there at the top. So anyone listening, Pete is the man. Like you really, really are. Lisa, do you have any questions for Pete before we kind of kick this off? I've got one that I've thought of that's not on the show notes, but do you have anything?
No, I'm just excited to get into it, but please go ahead with your question.
Okay, Pete, I remember you and I had I think it was a conversation on social not very long ago. So going back to grad school, um, I don't think a lot of people in the research community, maybe people were steering you towards being in the research community or having a job that was research based. And a lot of people on the research side, and I've got great friends, we all do, that are researchers, right? That we are very close with. And we work hand in hand with as prep coaches, and they're so vital. But I don't think a lot of people thought that being a full time prep coach was a good move. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Am I off on that?
No, that's accurate. I mean, so yeah, I mean, when I was in grad school, I think, I started my business in the last few years of grad school. Like, I was coaching more people, and it wasn't just a handful of local, because for a while it was just I was working a handful of local people I knew, whatever, here and there. And then it started becoming like people I didn't know. And I was getting more and more people and starting to travel to shows and stuff and having more clients compete, especially the last few years of grad school when I had an actual business. And it grew, and I think a lot of them kind of thought like, oh, well, here's this nice like side business, whatever, that I was going to go do the traditional like academia research, go get a postdoc, all of that. And I did very well on like the academic side of things. I mean, I don't know how many papers I've published at this point, but it's in the double digits that I'm an author on. I got a couple external grants. One was fairly large, funded my dissertation study, and funded me for a year even in grad school. And so like I did pretty well on that side of things, but there was too much waiting. Things didn't move. I got really annoyed because things didn't move as fast as I wanted them to in grad school. There was a lot of waiting on approvals from this committee or that committee or this research site or whatever. And you just end up like, I would get things turned around as fast as possible. So it wasn't me holding things up, but it would just get held up by this or that. And I got sick of waiting around and all the red tape and everything. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm not getting anywhere. And so, yeah, I think probably, 6 months to a year before I was done, I was like, all right, I'm not really going to cap my client load anymore like I had been. Let's make this a full-time thing. And it was rough there at the end writing a dissertation with a full client load, but it paid off. I had a full-time job when I was done, and this is all I've done since. But yeah, there are a lot of people that thought I should probably go the academic research route. And I'm 10 years later, I'm really glad I didn't. Just talking to my friends with the stuff they have to deal with in research and academia these days.
Yeah, I mean, you get to call your own shots. Like how important is that to you, especially now, 10 years in?
Yeah, I mean it's awesome, right? I mean, I've kind of created my own routine. Like, I mean, I know what days clients are checking and that I need to be available. I know what days I can go to the gym. I know when I'm traveling to shows, and I make the say of, hey, I'm going to this show, or you know what I mean? Like it's my decision, right? And so I can allow my schedule to like revolve around the contest schedule and client check-ins. It's yeah, I don't know if uh, work for someone with a set schedule again. It's been so long just doing my own thing.
Yeah, and one of the things that stands out to me at the very end of this, I'm going to ask you where you're at in 10 years. I've got some thoughts on that, so don't let me forget because I'm old. When we get there, after you answer, if you don't bring some stuff up, I have some thoughts on that, especially as it involves research. But I'm going to shut up for now, at least for a few minutes. And Lisa, you can take this and run it as only you can run it.
Amazing. Well, let's get into our first question. And that is actually, what are the three biggest crucial mistakes that you see competitors or coaches make when it comes to contest prep, getting on stage, etc.?
Um, yeah, I mean, so I think, a mistake probably when getting on stage, just for a competitor coach, I think is unrealistic, probably unrealistic timelines. And, a coach not calling a competitor out on their unrealistic timeline, or if someone's plan like is clearly not good, like so somebody, for example, competed or is competing this fall and they reach out in like a month after their show and say, yeah, I want to diet again for spring. The answer is no, or it should be no. I guess I'm at the point where I get it. Early on, you want to have all the clients you can get, when you're trying to get the clients you can, but trying to help someone with an unrealistic goal, you know what I mean? It's just going to lead to a lot of disappointment on their end, frustration on your end. Or like, hey, can you get me lean in 12 weeks for this show when they really need like double that amount of time. It's like, no, like you need to pick a later show. Like then you would be at your best, right? And so I think there's a lot of that. And I understand like early on, you're trying to get the clients you can, but trying to help them and do what's best for them and not just doing what the client wants, because that isn't necessarily always best. I mean, that's probably one of them. Um, other mistakes. I think from this isn't necessarily a competitor. It's probably like a coaching, building a business standpoint, but I feel like people spend far too much time worrying about social media, um,
Thank
and
God.
and and attracting how to build a. They're worried about social media following, YouTube, whatever, and that's all well and good. But if ultimately, if you can't coach, it doesn't matter. Like, if you're a coach and it says coach in your profile and all the pictures are you looking awesome, that's great. You look awesome. That could be genetics, that could be drugs, that could be hard work, that could be a combination of all of them. Doesn't mean you can coach anybody, and so I think a lot of people spend far too much time uh, focusing on how to build a social media following and get people to notice them and see them, and not enough time on uh, getting good at coaching and learning things, that would actually help people um, get results. And I mean, not that my way is the only way to do it, but I mean, a majority of my clients come from word of mouth, and I have less than 10,000 Instagram followers, and I've coached full time for a decade. It's it isn't. So I mean, word of mouth is still highly, highly powerful.
Yeah, you have
And
8,374 Instagram followers. Your Facebook is a normal Facebook page, right? Like
yeah,
nothing, but you have a full-time booming business and you stay full 100% of the time, year after year, correct?
yeah. I mean, there'll be the ups and downs early during the year. Like, it goes down in like November, December when shows wrap up for the year, back up in January. It has some ebbs and flows, but yeah, I never am like low on client, really anymore. That I have a ton of openings. And so I think word of mouth is just so powerful. Like, I'm sure you've noticed this too. Probably both of you have noticed this. If a client of yours tells someone to work with you and they reach out, the percentage chance that they work with you is pretty high.
Yeah,
You have someone that competes, they get on stage, they do well, their friend contacts you, pretty high percent chance they work with you. I'm guessing that if you do some sort of fancy like social media marketing campaign or click funnel or whatever, the percentage that actually work with you are going to be pretty low. You're some no-name person to them that showed up in their you know feed, right, or suggested posts or whatever.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, no, I just like getting people results word of mouth, I think is just huge. So that was more of a coaching issue. Then we talked about the timeline for the competitors. I think the other, issue, probably mistake a lot of competitors make is they try to, I would say peak week is probably a big one. Um, Other than rushing the process, I think peak week, a lot of people make a lot of mistakes. They think they need to change everything. And you hear all this crazy stuff that people are doing backstage. I mean, my first show, I cut salt, I cut water, and then I loaded carbs, and I wondered why I couldn't get a pump backstage, because I was sodium depleted, water depleted, and I mean, I wasn't very big. I'm not that big now. I mean, I was really not very big then, and so and so I didn't have a ton of muscle, sodium depleted, water depleted, couldn't get a pump. I mean, you hear all this crazy stuff that people do the last minute, and then you hear over and over again, like, oh, I look better at a week out than I did on show day. And it's like, well, then why did you change everything, right? Like if you're changing stuff that last week, it should be predictable. I typically with clients, we're testing things out ahead of time. Like I like to see clients be ready a couple weeks early and then, okay,
Same.
let's test this out. Let's see how it goes. And then that way, when you do it for real, you know exactly how they're going to respond. And you're not guessing and hoping for the best. So, I mean, I would say those are probably three big mistakes from like a competitor coaching, I mean, there are more, but that's a start.
I feel like the going back to peak week, which I know we need to do a whole episode on this at some point. Going back to prior to 2010, kind of when I started, things have definitely, the education has gone up a notch, especially thanks to social media. But back then, like you didn't drink water the day of the show. Like when I prepped my clients in 2010, no one was drinking water. And then Cliff's clients were kicking my clients' ass drinking water. I'm like, all right, I've got to figure out something's not working, right? So like,
Yeah.
but the reason why I bring this up is I feel like even as much like 15 years later, it's 2025.
Yeah.
I still see it constantly, people backstage. And I just had a client compete named Fernando, and he looked lights out. He had a gallon of water in him the day of the show. He looked ridiculous backstage, everything. And there's guys backstage talking to him and about drinking water, and they're just mind blown, really mind
Yeah.
blown. And I at this point I don't really talk to people too much about it because it feels like they're thinking I'm trying to poach them or something. But one, it's a long conversation. You can't do it in 5 minutes backstage. But there's just, I would still say 80, 90% of people backstage are doing a lot of these things that are mistakes. Are you seeing in most of my people now? I've got a lot of natural athletes. I'm going to a lot of NPC shows because a lot of my clients are older. They're on TRT, so they have to compete in the NPC. On the natural side of things, I always felt like there was more education on that side as
Yeah.
far as don't pull sodium, drink some water. Are you seeing there's still a lot of people making these mistakes on the natural side?
Not as many, I would say, anymore. I mean, there are still some, definitely still some, but it's not as prevalent. A lot of times, you know, well, and a lot of times I've noticed, and this is completely stereotyping, but it's a lot of the guys that prep enhanced athletes, but they don't prep them well. They just,
Right.
it's no food, low cardio, run them into the ground, and then give them
Right.
drugs to hold on to muscle. That type of prep, not a good prep coach, but they'll try to do that with naturals, and
Yeah.
it goes terribly.
Right.
And so you see some of that still, but like it isn't that it's pretty amazing how much better it's gotten. Because yeah, my first show in 2006, or sorry, not first show was 2004, but in 2006 was the first show I worked with Lane. That was the first prep that I worked with him. I was one of his like early on people, like in '06. And I was at a show and I was drinking water backstage.
Yeah.
And I got on stage, and I mean, this was a natural bodybuilding has changed a lot, right? So 2006, this was a show in Iowa that was not a pro qualifier. There was only bodybuilding, right? No classic, no men's physique. There were four open classes, and there were like 8 or 9 of us in every open class at a show that wasn't even a pro qualifier because most of
Yeah.
them weren't back then. And the ones that were, the level of competition was insane. And it was pretty clear I was going to be like top three in my class. And I was only 20 years old. And show was co-promoted, and one of the promoters came backstage and found me like after pre-judging, was like, I hear you're drinking water back here. How do you look so dry? Like
Yeah.
that was actually a question I got, in 2006 when I was drinking water at that show. I ended up placing second in that class, and it was a completely foreign concept at that point to be drinking water backstage.
Yeah, I remember there was a thread on muscular development message boards that Lane started.
Yeah,
It was called Water, Carbs, and Sodium. Oh
yeah,
my. And I
yeah,
remember it literally broke the message board because you had everybody in there debating it. And he's posting pictures left and right from
yeah,
2007. Picture
yeah.
of you might even have been in there back then, 2007,
Yeah,
2008. And people were pissed because it
yeah,
went against everything they thought was
yeah,
true.
yeah,
But anyway, I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. But
yeah. Yeah.
it'll be exciting to see where we're at in 2035. Is everybody drinking water, or is it still going to be 80% of people backstage just not,
Yeah, I would say though, like I was at like the OCB Viking, and they had like 180 competitors. The show was massive. It was like a 12-hour day. I had people in almost every division. I was backstage the entire day, and I mean, not that I know what everybody was doing, but I felt like the vast majority of people, at least the ones doing well, were, what I mean, all drinking water. I don't think that, what I mean? Like it really has improved a lot, I feel like.
Yeah, and shout out to Brian Berkland, by the way. I mean, that's probably, I would say, the show, probably a
Oh, in
natural
this part of the
bodybuilder.
country, it's the biggest, absolutely, in the Midwest at this point. Yeah.
And then you've got coaches like you and Brian and other people sending a lot of clients. So I can see how it's better backstage for sure, as far as the
Yeah.
education. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting. Yeah.
So speaking of
yeah.
things that, coaches do differently, etc., I'm curious, Pete, what's something that you feel like you do that sets you apart from others, or just in general, what sets like a quote unquote good coach apart from those that struggle more?
Yeah. I think one thing that probably sets me apart that's a little bit different is probably like response times and like the schedule that I keep. So like a lot of coaches, I think the stereotype in the industry is they, stay up all night and sleep, in and whatever. And um I am up at like on my client check-in days, I'm at my computer at 4:30 in the morning, Monday, Thursday when my clients check in. They're checking in before work. If they're 2 weeks, 3 weeks out from a show, I want to make those changes right away that day so they can make them that day, and we're off to the races, right? I don't want to lose that day. I don't want to lose that time. I don't want it to be on me that we lost a day that we should have changed something and we didn't. And so I ask for updates right away in the morning early. Tell my clients get them in early before noon, first thing in the morning. I am up with them, getting back to them. And same with show day, right? Like, I had clients competing out east both Saturday and Sunday this last weekend. So, I mean, they're an hour ahead of me. So my phone's going off 3, 4 a.m. both, at both mornings, and that's part of it, right? Is making the actually caring, making the adjustments, making sure you're doing everything you can for them to be as good as possible. And yeah, I mean, and I think so. Some of that, like I think is probably, you know what I mean, like something that would set me apart, I guess, from other people. I mean, other people can wake up early and do that, but like, I always I think of it as like, okay, well, I might not always get it right, I might not know everything, but like, you're not. Nobody can say I didn't care. Nobody can say I didn't get back to them. Like if someone's trying to decide between me and another coach. I want it to be like, hey, that coach doesn't work as hard as I do. Like that coach isn't gonna you know what I mean, outwork me, right? And so, and I know probably my clients listening right now can attest to some of this stuff, right? Getting emails from me at like 5 in the morning and stuff, on their check-in days, and chatting on the phone the day before their show at 4:30 in the morning or something. But and not that everybody checks in that early, but for the ones that do, like I'm available and I'm gonna make sure I get back to them. So I don't know. For me, that's something I feel like is huge, right? Because I've had clients who, I mean, over the years, like I've had clients who maybe for whatever reason things didn't go the best, but like they've still referred clients to me because they're like, you actually cared, you actually tried, and so I think that says something.
It's one of those things too. You just don't, as simple and basic as what you just said sounds, is just working hard, caring.
Mhm.
This day and age, I feel like that's almost going the extra mile, which leads to word
Yeah,
of mouth, which leads to referrals. So like you're building a whole business and you have built a whole business off just those principles, which is
yeah,
just who you are. Like you're not even trying to do that. That's who you are as a person, right? So if people would actually put forth that effort and try, they wouldn't have to worry about social media and promoting stuff on, you know what I'm saying? It's like that leads to massive word of mouth. So yeah, good
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like you said with social media, like mine social media is a lot of just my clients, right? And their progress and their results or whatever. But like you said, like not everyone wins every show. I feel like a lot of people only post their clients who win. Like I'll post clients who don't win. That's fine. I mean, they look awesome. And so that's, you know what I mean? Like that's the important thing. If the look is consistent, like you're not going to win every show. Just because you win one week doesn't mean, I mean, you could show up to this crazy lineup and not even take top five the next. Like there's so much of placing that's out of your control. Like the important thing is the look consistent? Are they getting better? And are you tweaking things to, improve every time? And if you're
Yeah.
doing that, then things are moving in the right direction.
And one other thing that I know that you stick out from other coaches with, I know because I've lived this life for a long time, and the only reason I don't anymore is because I've got like five businesses to like overlap, right? But I still go to a ton of client shows. But you literally, when it's deep into the season, like you're there. If
Yeah.
I show up to a show in the Midwest, I typically run into you, like the bigger, more important shows, right?
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of that hustle still there. You live it. I did it for a long time, probably like 10, 12 years. Cliff did it for a long time. I know he had a little bit of health stuff that he talked about publicly that people know about, which caused him to step back, but he was right in the trenches with me. I don't see a lot of that. I feel like that's an opportunity. If you have three clients getting on stage, in my
Yeah.
opinion, Pete, I would recommend going to every show, no matter what,
Yeah. No,
right?
I try to get to everything. I can't get to everything everywhere, right? Like, um, there was like, I had a client compete in like Utah, or had
Yeah.
clients in like Texas or Florida. So like I don't get to every show everywhere, but like even if I'm not at a client's show, like they're sending updates Friday morning, they're sending updates Friday afternoon, possibly Friday night, depending on what we're doing. Saturday morning a couple times before they're on stage. Like we are in communication. Like we have scheduled check-in times that they are sending me updates and we're chatting and making sure things are good. You don't, I don't understand. Like there's a lot of people out there who just get a peak plan from their coach and it's like, here you go. And they don't hear from their coach on show day or the day before the show. And it's like, we should be making sure things are still good, like, and adjusting if we need to. And again, that's like you said, that's easy, right? That's not like that's like the basics. And but yeah, traveling to shows, like we're in the middle of it right now. I mean, I did Chicago, Minneapolis, and Madison in September, and I'm going to Lexington and Sioux Falls the next 2 weekends. um
Yeah.
you know so yeah, I mean,
I
but I
think
mean
to me
the
it just stands out that you really care, and I think that's
Yeah.
wonderful. That's something intrinsic. I know, like, I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily that it's something someone either has or doesn't, but I certainly think it shows that it's just in your nature, and I think that's absolutely wonderful. And I'm curious because you mentioned like progress over time, etc. And I mean, you
Yeah.
as a coach have progressed as well, obviously, and have learned a thing or two probably. So I'm curious, what's something you've changed your mind on over the last, yeah, 10 years or so?
Um, yeah, one thing I would say I've changed my mind on quite a bit, it probably is more than 10 years now. It's probably more like, I don't know, closer to 15, but is daily activities, step counts, daily movement outside of the gym. I remember I don't remember what year it was, probably like 2012-ish, 11, 12, sitting at like a ACSM conference where I was speaking on some of my research. And I somehow was put in a session with a bunch of people who were doing research on like the early stuff that became like the technology used in Fitbits and Apple Watches and stuff. But this was like 15 years ago when that technology was just getting kind of developed. And so there's a lot of like validation studies of, does this technology work? How accurate is it? All of that. And so I was somehow in this session with all of that stuff. And I'm like, sitting there thinking to myself, man, nobody cares about this. Like, why am I in this session? Like, why am I speaking? My topic's not anything related to this. Why am I sitting here? And I remember that. And now it's funny because here we are, 2025. The vast majority of my clients who are dieting for shows, we're tracking steps and we care about activity outside the gym because for a few reasons. One is nobody is a few reasons I use it. One is nobody is a bodybuilder full time. Nobody makes a living doing this full time, and so it's a way to get more activity, burn a few more calories, that doesn't require them being in the gym for longer. And so for a lot of my clients are full-time job parents, whatever, students. They don't have time to be in the gym forever when dieting for a show doing cardio, and so it's just another way to burn a few more calories without that. It's also low intensity, so you can recover better from it, versus running them into the ground with higher intensity cardio. I was in that, and John can probably remember this, back in I did a prep in 2012 where I was doing 4 sessions that hit cardio a week and doing, and then trying to train legs twice a week on top of it. And I was deep in prep at the end of prep, and like my legs were shot going into leg day. Like I'd be warming up on my first leg movement. And I'm like, there's nothing here. I'm so depleted from doing so, I just wasn't recovering at all because I was super lean, low food. And so it's lower intensity to avoid some of that so that they can train hard. And daily activity goes down over time, or goes down during prep, like when someone's lean and food's super low. And some of it's twitching and fidgeting. You can't do anything about that. But some of it is your step counts go down. And so um, you know, that's actually why I started tracking steps with clients. Is I had a client, and it's probably like close to 10 years ago now, probably something like that, probably 10 years ago, that we hit like a major wall in their contest prep. And they were a teacher. And we hit the wall right around like June. And like we were making adjustments and like pulling food, adding cardio, and it just wasn't moving. And so I started asking about what are you eating? It was someone that had competed before. So I was like, I don't think, you know what I mean? I think they had competed before. So like, okay, they know how to track food accurately. And then kind of got into talking about what they were doing during their daily life. And they were like, yeah, so the semester ended and now my food's super low and my cardio is super high. So I'm tired and I kind of just lay around all day rather than
Yeah.
being up on my feet teaching. And I was like, okay, that, and then so that from there is like, okay, let's set a step target. And it worked very, very well. And so then I started using it with more clients, and then I started hearing more coaches doing similar stuff. And I was like, okay, like this, might be helpful. And it's something I do with a lot of my clients at this point, especially during prep. And so that would be something I definitely come a long way since that conference, ACSM conference, like 13-ish years ago, where I was just like, this is pointless.
You know, that's one of the things I've learned a lot of things from you over the years. That's one of the things I started paying attention to was NEAT,
Yeah,
non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which means, the stuff that you're doing outside of exercise. And I really started paying attention to that, I think probably around 10 years ago. You spoke on it somewhere, maybe even it was Physique Summit, I can't remember, but we were at the same place. And I remember thinking, okay, I've been stage lean multiple times. What I want to do is literally lay around and watch TV because
yes,
I have
yeah,
low food. I have to do my cardio and work out. I just want to lay around. And over time, like that's a lot of movement that you
yeah,
sacrifice. So then I started talking to my clients. I'm like, hey, one, make sure you're sleeping in, but don't lay around all day. Like do your
yeah,
normal stuff because
yeah.
people don't want to, you don't want to mow the yard. Like if you have a mate, like you don't want to have sex as much. Like you don't want to do these things that require energy, right? When you're that lean. And you're one of the guys that had me actually think about that. So like that's definitely one thing I learned from you.
Yeah, and I think too, just having someone just live their, even if they're not tracking steps, like, and say you're just dieting and you don't want to bother tracking steps or whatever, just making a conscious effort to be like, hey, this is what I normally do during life. I'm going to keep living my life. That'll help keep activity up, but it also keeps your mind off of like the cut, right? Like
Yeah.
if you normally push mow your lawn, go push mow your lawn, or you normally walk your dog, go walk your dog. Like doing the stuff you normally would do rather than laying around. Because I think that's where prep can get really miserable for people when they just
Yeah.
make it. I feel like when I was younger, as I've gotten older, it's harder to do that. You know what I mean? Like make prep the only thing. Like I can look back to like when I was like an undergrad in college. I mean, there were preps where I was prepping like in the summer and stuff where other than working, I didn't have like any responsibility, any real responsibility, and other than like a part-time summer job or something, and so I was able to, other than work, kind of make prep the only thing, and it's a lot more miserable when you do that because you just sit around thinking about prep and how hungry and tired you are, and if you can keep living your life, it is so much easier. Like the time goes by faster because you're just doing what you normally would do. You aren't just sitting around thinking about how hungry and tired you are.
Yeah.
Are,
Agree.
are there any other mistakes that you can think of that you have done or made in the past when it comes
Um,
to?
that I have done, I would say like, I mean, my first prep, I did, granted, this dates me a bit, right? But my first prep was 2004 when I was 18. I'll be 40 in February, right? So back then there weren't the resources there are now for coaches. Like I had dial-up internet at my parents' house when I was in high school
Yeah.
back then. And so uh, you kind of worked with whoever was at your gym that had competed before or kind of knew more than and so but everybody kind of did the same thing, right? So like I remember like my prep was like, a set meal plan, but it was the same meal plan as like other guys were doing.
Yeah.
It wasn't, and like had big cheat meals and cheat days and a bunch of fasted cardio, and all of my workouts were super high rep lightweight. It was like a lot of sets of like, 20 or so exclusively, because of the myth of like, high reps, make you more cut, that type of
Yeah.
myth.
Yeah.
And I feel like I lost a lot of, I didn't have a lot of size to begin with. Like I posted pictures of what I looked like when I had lifted weights for 2 or 3 years before I started that prep. And I barely looked like I lifted weights after lifting weights for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
I'm not a fast gainer, great genetics or anything like that. And so, yeah, I think just a lot of that stuff, I think would probably be like things that I worked with Lane, and like my second prep was completely different. And I've only worked with either Lane or Cliff during preps. So they've always, things were very different working with Lane and Cliff, than the stereotypical what everybody was doing back then.
What is there anything recent? If we want to go, say, within the last 5 years, have you either changed your mind on something here recently, maybe even at the smallest of levels? I know, there's a lot of things I've started to look at differently, like my natural competitors' testosterone levels before prep starts and think, is there anything
Yeah.
anywhere that you've really kind of brought in that you've learned from the last 5 years?
Yeah, I would say probably more of that, right? Like looking at more
Okay.
of like the lab work, like, especially in a situation where it's like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, this is your intake, this is your activity. We've gone through everything you're doing during the day, everything you're eating, you know what I mean? Like if you're telling me the truth, then what else is going on here, and
Yeah.
looking more at some of that stuff, right? And inevitably something pops up, or something I've actually gotten several times now is when we get to the point where I'm like, yeah, there's really nothing more we can do. You gotta do some lab work done. Like something's not right here. I've had several occasions when I get to that point with them where they're like, oh yeah, I guess I have been eating, this and this. Like all of a sudden the truth comes out,
Yeah.
where it's like, yeah, I was just eating a bunch of extra food, or I wasn't doing this, or and
Yeah.
then once they correct that, they're fine. But like, so ironically, like just even suggesting like, hey, there might be something more going on. All of a sudden, I don't know if you've seen that. I've had several people where like all of a sudden the truth comes out, and it was like, oh, well, that would explain why we're not seeing the progress we should be.
Yeah, I've noticed once I check all the boxes, everybody's
Yeah,
sleeping the amount
yeah,
they need
yeah,
to. If they sleep in for a weekend and they're not hitting new lows, and it's a
yeah,
female, she's eating 1,200 calories
yeah,
and
yeah,
doing her cardio and all that, or a
yeah,
guy eating 1,800
yeah,
and they're not dropping, 99% of the time, either their tracking's not sufficient and they're
yeah,
too loosely tracking,
yeah,
or they're eating. And I can't tell you how many times I've ran into, well, I just had some extra protein and peanut butter, like some protein powder and peanut butter. But I
yeah,
know what that's like because I've done that myself during prep. And
yeah.
I would overeat 40, 50 grams of fat. Well, there's 400 or 500 calories right there just in
Oh
one
yeah,
sitting,
that'll stall.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
So like you
yeah.
don't think about it, but yeah, I get that a lot.
Yeah, no, and I don't remember where I read it, but it was a good analogy, where who had said it or where I read it, but they were like, if you're consistent 5 of the 7 days, right? You're consistent Monday through Friday, but not the weekend. That's 71% of the days you're consistent. 71% of C in school is a C minus. So if you have C minus
Yeah.
consistency, you're going to get C minus results. And if you want better than C minus results, you got to be consistent over the weekend also. And I always, that one always stuck with me. I was like, that's a really good analogy.
Yeah, 100%. 5 out of 7
Yeah,
sounds good, but it's
yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I want to shift gears a little bit more into the personal side of things. So I'm curious, or I'd love to ask you, what's something that inspires you to just continue to be better? Do you have someone that you look up to? Do you just generally draw inspiration from something in particular, or is there anything like that?
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything in particular. I think for me, I think one thing I've kind of fallen into with coaching, because like I really enjoy bodybuilding. I enjoy competing. I still compete, and it's 20 some years later, right? I have all these clients competing into their 40s, 50s, and even 60s, and I'm like, yeah, I want to keep doing this, right? That I don't think that'll ever stop. But like, I'm fully aware that like I have fairly average genetics for doing this. Like I can work as hard as I want. I can get shredded. I can pose well, but size wise, it is what it is, right? I'm fairly average genetically. And so I'm never going to be a world champ. I'm never going to, you know what I mean? Like, like be the best bodybuilder, but that doesn't mean I can't be the best coach, you know? And so like, and I can't, doesn't mean I can't coach people who are winning world titles. And so, you know, that part of it, right? Like it's a way for me to still, you know, okay, so maybe I, you know, I'm not a world champion or don't have the genetics to be a world champion bodybuilder, but like I can work with some of these people who have these, you know what I mean, who are better bodybuilders than me and help them get to really high levels. And that's a lot of fun, you know, or also it's a lot of fun too. That part's fun. Also a lot of fun too to work with a beginner and have them have like a really good first prep experience because so many people work with terrible coaches and you come across people who have dieted for shows before and they'll tell you how terrible it was because they were doing like 2 hours of cardio a day, or they, you know, the dehydration at the end was just awful, or, you know, some of this stuff. And I think it's really cool to, you know, work with someone who's 20 years old, you know, and it's their first prep. And I had a couple of younger guys this fall who are early 20s, have great experiences, do very well at shows. I think both of them are probably going to stick with it. They greatly enjoyed, you know what I mean? Enjoyed it. And I both have told me like, man, my prep was so much better than what I heard my friends talking about, you know, and so like that part of it's really cool too, you know, and so to get someone else to, you know, enjoy it as much as I do.
You know what, Pete, you just reminded me of something going back to, you know, your physique, competing and doing things at that level. I've had numerous people over the years, as far as me, give me shit about not building a world-class physique or even a better physique, right? And what I try and tell people is, listen, you don't remember Phil Jackson played in the NBA. You don't remember anything
Yeah.
that he did in the NBA. You remember him as a coach. Bill Belichick, you can name all these people that wanted to be the best coach that they can be. And I think that's a really good example to use. And I think a lot of that just comes from people that compete that aren't very good at coaching and they take stabs at people that have built successful
Yeah.
businesses. No one remembers Phil Jackson playing in the
Yeah.
NBA. He's
Yeah.
literally probably the greatest of all time coach. So for our coaches listening out there, obviously you do want to build a very respectable physique because you're a walking billboard. But if you want to be the best coach you can be, it's really hard to do both. I don't know a lot of people that have done both. Jason Theobald comes to mind. There are others out there, but the amount of stress and toll that it takes on your body is just immense if you're trying to put both up there at the very top of your list.
Yeah. Well, and two, I would also argue that if you look, bodybuilding is no different than other sports, right? The best professional athletes typically aren't the best coaches. You know, it's the same in bodybuilding, right? Like I have talked to some of the elite, you know what I mean? Like elite of the elite in the natural sport, you know, like in terms of competing, they would far better than me, right? Like blow me away. And they try to get into coaching and their clients are doing all kinds of crazy stuff, but then their clients don't look good. They don't place well. And I think a lot of it is, you know, if you have elite genetics, you can get away with some stuff. You know, it's no
Yeah.
different than like if you're enhanced, right? If you're enhanced,
Right.
you can get away with some stuff.
Yep.
You know, but if you're a natural with average genetics, you can't do those things and still be, you know, as good as you could be. And so, you know, someone who's elite and everything came easy to them, they build muscle easy or they get lean really easily. They've never had to like troubleshoot like or you know, deal with like, hey, what about the average person, you know, with the average genetics? And you know, I think someone who has not elite genetics probably has to work through that a little more, um, than someone with elite genetics. Not that someone with elite genetics couldn't be a good coach. I think that's just something that has to be learned or overcame. You know what I mean? For them that they have to realize that, hey, most people aren't going to have the genetics I have or going to be able to progress like I can. You
Yeah.
know?
100%.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that. And John, you had a question as we started off with this podcast. You said you wanted to finish off with an amazing question, so let's hear it.
Well, first of all, I want to, Pete, where is Pete in 10 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? And by the way, maybe you haven't thought about this. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. Like some people are like, well, I'm present right now. I'm just going to grow, grow, grow. Or do you see yourself at a certain place in 10 years? Is that something that you have mapped out? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm not one that sits down and you know, for better or worse, I'm not one that really maps things out, you know, 10 years from now, I don't know. But, you know, I think for me, 10 years from now, I'm still only going to be, I'll be just almost 50 at that point, which is crazy. And so, but I mean, the goal would be like to just keep working with more client, like, working with more clients, building the business, building my name. I mean, that's still the ultimate goal, right? Is to be like when someone's looking for a natural bodybuilding prep coach, like I want to be one of the first people they think of. Like, you know what I mean? Like who should I work with? Like, that's my goal. Like I want to be that, you know what I mean, name. And so, I've made some progress in that direction in the last 10 years, but like, you know, continuing moving in that direction, right? I feel like I'm really starting to, last few years getting more momentum. I feel like I was getting some momentum. COVID kind of happened and threw a wrench in things, and now we're past, I'm far beyond anything I was before COVID, but like,
Yeah.
trying to keep it moving in that direction.
So here's the way I picture you, and this is just knowing you and the things that you've done over the years and your qualifications. When Pete's 50, which is almost 10 years from now, it's crazy, but I'm 48. I'm about to be 50. But
I'm
when
39,
you're,
so
yeah, yeah. So in like close to 10 years from now, with the ability that you have as a prep coach, one, it's just going to get better. And it's
yeah,
it's it's kind of like bodybuilding. Like when you've been bodybuilding for a long time, making improvements, it takes longer, right? So like to me, in your coaching career, you're at this point to where getting better, adding more knowledge, there's only so much more to add out there, right? But it's going to continue to happen. But over the next 10 years, I think the place that you could make the biggest impact outside of that is your ties to the research community and how fast research is starting to get involved with physique enhancement and bodybuilding in general.
yeah,
I could see you and people like Bill Campbell and whoever working together to really bring us the research on extreme physique enhancement even faster. And the industry needs more people like you because dude, you're the perfect guy. You have the base of people that can help studies out,
yeah,
and you have the research side. Like
yeah,
you have a
yeah.
PhD. So like you and Bill Campbell could make big things happen. You could make big things. I don't know how the research side works. I've been involved with it a little bit with Bill,
Yeah.
but
The, Yeah, the hard thing, so the hard thing is funding, right? Like and getting money to do some of these studies, right? Because there's all kinds of stuff I would love to study in the bodybuilding side of things, but money, right? So like my dissertation, like all of my research in grad school was on like diseases and muscle wasting because there's money in that, right? Like preventing muscle wasting with disease. There isn't a ton of money in like how to get as jacked as humanly possible. And so that's what makes it much more of a challenge. And that's always too when I see people like criticizing this study or that study in like the strength and conditioning world, I'm like, yeah, they're probably working with like next to no budget. Sure, they probably wanted to do all these other things. You're saying, why didn't they do this, and this in that study? They probably wanted to. There's just not a ton of funding, you know what I mean? In for that.
yeah,
There's a lot more funding for the other side, right? Like preventing muscle loss and aging and disease and all of that than there is on the getting as big and strong as humanly possible, which is frustrating, but that, you know what I mean? That is kind of how it is, right?
yeah. Well, if I'm someone like Bill Campbell, I'm going to reach out to someone to collaborate with, like you, that has the client base that you have,
Yeah.
especially the work he does with females, but just
Yeah.
bodybuilders in general, like that. And that's what I mean is for
Yeah.
you to get more involved. If that's your passion, I could just see
Yeah.
that relieve not only, I mean, that's legacy type shit to me.
Yeah.
Like it's a
Yeah.
big deal, and you're one of the
Yeah.
few that can hit it from all sides. So
Yeah.
just thought I'd
Yeah,
throw.
no, I mean that would be something. And I mean I've written for Bill's research review a couple of times and yeah. So I know Bill somewhat.
Yeah, well, we're super fortunate to have you part of Fat Muscle. We've got our 10-year anniversary coming up, and I know you'll be involved in that at somehow, some way, or a part of it because you have been for so long. So that'll be coming up next summer. Lisa, do you have any follow-up questions for Pete?
No, I honestly just thanks so much for your time, Pete. It's been a pleasure getting to know you a little bit more, learning from you, and yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, if you guys want to hit Pete up. All of his information is in the show notes. Just hit pause and just go to our show notes. His email's there. No one's going to spam you or anything like that. His social media will be there. But hit him up if you're looking for a good prep coach. Definitely hit him up. I highly recommend him. So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. If you want to hear more questions, topics, guests, just hit us up. Lisa and I both have our email and contact information in the show notes as well. So you guys have a great rest of your day. We're out of here. See ya.